Evening, everyone, and welcome to season 2 of the Tuesday Night Talks. This is the pre-show component, so we'll give you an opportunity to check your audio, check your video, and settle in for the next 45 minutes. We're fortunate in the fact that HSBC Bank Canada is sponsoring season 2. So it's a beautiful winter day here in Whistler, and it's ideal for both Nordic and alpine skiing at this time of year. We're still in the midst of the COVID pandemic, and travel restrictions are still in place across British Columbia, where there has been a total of 1,000 deaths related to COVID, and we're reaching almost 2 million deaths worldwide. So still in a very different time. Here at the Audain Art Museum, we're taking every precaution to keep our staff and visitors safe. The museum is open 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. We still have a bunch of wonderful products available online. This wonderful dance screen pocket square for the men and or ladies that like to wear pocket squares. Thank you, Brianna. And a full scarf. I guess you could wear it sort of like this, also of Jim Hart's dance screen. So, without further ado, Brianna, we're going to start the program, and hopefully everybody's tuned in, and hockey is such a passé thing at this hour. So, as I said, welcome to Season 2, Episode 1, and this new season of Tuesday Night Talks is sponsored by HSBC Bank Canada. As mentioned, we're still in the midst of the COVID pandemic, and we're under a BC health order that limits travel. Tonight, we're in the Crystal Gallery by the flashlight's glow, and I'm sitting here in front of what is the Audain Art Museum's masterpiece, and that's the dance screen, the Screen 2, from 2010 to 2013, created by James Hart. We've set a new record tonight. We have over 500 people registered for this live Zoom broadcast, so thank you to everyone. And in addition to talking about the production of this screen over the course of 3 years, we'll also talk about when it was danced in the fall of 2018, which really completed this process. And I should also acknowledge that we're on the shared territories of the Squamish and Lillooet nations here in Whistler. Now, we're going to go live to James Hart in his home studio in Old Masset on Haida. Welcome, Jim. How you doing?
Fine, Dr. Curtis, thank you. And good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here under these conditions, and it's a wonderful thing to be able to kick off this TNT. It's an amazing program that they have going. Thank you.
So, Jim, perhaps you can begin with just a little background about how this incredible carving was conceived.
Well, it all started out with a trip I made to Michael Audain's house, one of his houses that he gets away from everything on. And so I went out there for a visit, looked at his wonderful art collection that he had in his place there. And then before it was time to leave, he was asking me if I would do something for one of his walls. And so, you know, I got pretty intrigued by that, and I had a good look at his walls, and then I left and went away, my wife and I. Rosemary. And we went back to Vancouver, and I hung out there for a while, thinking about this, what he had asked me to do. And it was like, we know, a blank slate thing, blank page, whatever you want to call it, but it was blank. And it was like, oh, so I had the chance to do something. And so I was kind of intimidated for a few moments, thinking, geez, I was thinking of all kinds of things. And I was like, what the heck? But I calmed down, and I started thinking about something serious. I got to say something serious here. So as I was thinking about my idea, it started to bloom, it started to grow. And so I phoned Michael up, and I said, Michael, will you give me your whole wall? And he laughed. And he said, yeah, he thought about it quickly. And yeah, okay, we'll do that. And so what I did was I made another trip to his place, and I measured the wall up nicely to get an accurate measurement on it. And so I went away again, and then I started drawing full size in our house. We had a house out in Musqueam at the time. And I had my son Carl, he just started working with me. And we laid this big piece of paper out on the living room floor, full size. We squared it up. I had him square it up for me so that I started drawing. And then he would trace that and flip it over to the other side. And then I got so far with it, and I figured, okay, I better see if I'm on the right track. And so I went to visit Michael at his home in Horseshoe Bay. And so, but he had just gotten off an operation a few days before, and he was at home recovering. And I hadn't realized that at the moment, but he said, come on over anyway. And so I went over, and I realized he was in that state. But there was space on his floor, so I laid the drawing out on the floor for him, and he was on his couch, and he's looking over the edge of the couch at it. And then he gets himself up, and I started explaining how the drawing was going to work, and how the figures were all going to work, and the depth and all this stuff. And we were both wandering around on the drawing, and I was showing him this and that and talking about it. He could see it all. He could see it all. He said, right, great. And so I said, well, this is the time to change anything, if we want to change it, any ideas. And so he said, no, that's fine. And so I bailed off, and I went home, and I started redrawing the detail on the drawing, not redrawing, but just adding detail to it. So we started finishing. I had my son, we were both back and forth. I'd go somewhere and draw it out. I'd change something else, and he'd be right there tracing it and flipping them around to the other side, because it was the same on both sides, except for the whales, so a little different. So that's how it started. But in the meantime, as I'm doing this, I had the commission to do this project. And so I talked to a fellow at home here who he was kind of like a logger, not really. He'd get a hold of this old fire-killed wood from our lands here, and that's all he would cut. And he would make lumber out of this wood and different things. And so I was after this old wood because that forest fire was, at the time, was like 128, 129 years ago. And then I wanted to try this old fire killed stuff because it would be drier. And because this project's going to go inside on a wall, and I'm going to have some depth to it, I figured, okay, less moisture. Standing dead for over 120 something years. And I figured, okay, I'll use this wood because it'd be a lot drier than the totally green red cedar that I would be getting a hold of. And so there was moisture in it, and it dried a lot quicker, but there was still moisture, and it did crack. A few pieces cracked a little bit, but not much, and they closed up again. And so I was quite happy about that process. And the guy that got the wood for me, took him just about 3 years too to accumulate the amount of wood through, because there were big slabs, big huge slabs, and we wanted no knots if possible and all this kind of stuff. And so he took care and found the wood.
Let's go to those images of the wood if we can, Justine. There we go.
Here we are. We're just starting to, I had the wood stored for quite a while, covered up in plastic, and, and then it come time to get busy on it. So had these railings made up, and then we had to pick up the slabs with a high ab and then slide it in through the frame of our covering, our our workspace, put it in place. But it was kind of a interesting process too. I had to figure out the heights just from the thickness of the wood I had, and try to picture in my mind where the highest points were going to be and where I could use the thicker pieces. So we had to jostle it around a little bit to fit it best I could. Because once the Haida had done his job, holy smokes, each slab was so heavy we could barely move them. So it's just an amazing amount of effort to move one piece, just a few inches left or right, you know. It's like amazing. Next. Here we are with my son and Leon, Carl and Leon Ridley. Carl, he's cutting away with the old crosscut. Leon's got another smaller crosscut, and what we're doing is, I thought the cuts would be squared. You know, the back is cut square and the sides would be cut square, but they weren't. They were off on an angle. And so Carl and Leon are running the saws through to cut the top edge to make it fit tighter and tighter and tighter. We did that on each slab until it got too thick. There was too much work to cut through, and so we just stopped there, and we're going to take the rest down later on as we were working on them. Next. There it is, the drawing with a full size. I had a company in Vancouver scan it and do it full size without distortion. They did distort it a little bit. I think it was about a ½ inch over top to bottom. And so we just adjusted here and there for it. And then what I was doing with the drawing, I had about 3 of them made because they get deteriorated after a while when you're using them. So we had one of the drawings and we're pulling it around on the wood because we had a little bit extra top and bottom. And we're trying to figure out where the high points were, like the tip of the beak and the nose of the bear and the paws and all this stuff. They're all high points. And so we figured it out, and then we laid her down. This was now set in stone. So that's what the purpose of the drawing was in this at this point. Next. Now we've jumped into it quite a bit here. We missed out on a lot of the, slabs we had to bring down. And it's funny because all the high points, the serious high points, like the tip of the nose, the bear, the tip of the beak and the eagle and the hands, there's a bruise. It was funny how that worked out. There was a bruise in the wood from grappling, the big machinery, picking up the logs and moving them around and stuff. They just plunk, 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 and it bites in deep. And so through time, I had to deal with every one of them, but we did a nice job, cleaned it all up nice, and in fact, you can't tell today that was going on in there. We got past it all in the wood. So anyway, yeah, this year now is in the Bill Reed Gallery, I think. Looks like it. And we moved from here. We were up here for about 2 years, just over 2 years, working in that shop. And we're in the weather, 2 winters in there, and it's kind of cold and all this. And we'd take our shoes off to walk around on top of the wood there in our woolen socks, so we wouldn't mark it up. But the wood would be so cold that our feet would start getting cold through the wool. It's like walking on ice after a while. Kind of funny that way. But another thing was the sides of our building. There was just enough room for us to squeeze by the ends. We go to the top side and work, and then squeeze by and work along the side and work on the bottom. But Christmas come along, and we went back to work, and we're all tightening up, and we all put on weight, and so it was a lot harder for us to squeeze. This shot here is moving a little further along. You see the detailing starting, and how we starting to finalize all the final detailing on it. It was a long time. I had 4 of us. There was 4 of us working on it until just before we went to Vancouver. I hired another young guy, Brandon Brown, joined the group just before we left to go bring it down to Vancouver to finish it off there. And when we hit Vancouver, we worked in the Bill Reed Gallery for a few months, and we started fitting the abalone shell in that. And and John Brent was doing all the cutting on that. He was outside cutting it, but the smell would come through. Not a nice smell. It's organic, right? And so pretty soon we were out of there.
Where did you get those shells from, Jim?
Power shells from New Zealand, South Island of New Zealand. I ran into a company that sells them, and so I put in a nice big order. And within a week, I had them sitting up in Vancouver in a box, come through the post. And he was telling me how they have to clean them with special chemicals and all this stuff to make sure there's no germs coming into the country, you know, all this kind of stuff. And when I get it and I pull it out of the box, there's meat on the shells and stuff like that. But it sounded serious, but it was just the game they're playing. But we had all this beautiful shell, and so John Brent's really good with color, and he knows I'm kind of colorblind. And so John Brent would set the shells out in patterns, you know, like this, a little more green in this bunch and a little more blue in this bunch, and set them up nicely. And then I did all the cutting. My son was doing all the fitting on the wood in there, most of the fitting, fitting pieces together. And so it was an amazing process. I lost them for like 3 months doing this fitting. And I thought, you know, less than a week will be done. In a matter of days, we'd have it all done. But no, I lost them for like 3 months, and I was counting on that. Some guys back on the wood, moving wood for me. But anyway, so it goes. Part of the process. Here we are, quoting. Okay, this one here now, the upright. When we're in the upright like this, we're in the Vancouver Art Gallery now, in the final finishing, which was a lot of fun too. Being involved in the art gallery, we're up on the 3rd floor, I think it was, and you could hear show openings going on throughout the art gallery as we're working up there. Sound traveled up. There's a nice big kind of a hole through the center of the building, and but we had a lot of fun with the people visiting. People going to the art galleries are special people. They like art, you know, and so their focus is on art, and really quite a lot of fun to mix with that crowd, and we interacted with them a lot. So a lot of fun. This here is the salmon. You can see them kind of schooled up there. Interesting. We're kind of hiding them away because in the beginning, when we first got there, we'd lay the salmon out on the floor. And every day the guys would make a different pattern, make them doing different things on the floor. And then one day, one of the fellows that works there says, aren't you scared of somebody stealing one? I said, no, everybody's pretty good. Then 2 days later, we noticed one missing out of the bunch. And so anyway, we couldn't track it down in the sense we checked the security and stuff and figured it out. But we had another one. We had made 2 spare just in case something happened. And so there's one, I've got one left over, and that's it. But it worked out well. So we colored them, see the coloring on the top, and then I had this mica, no guy that worked at the Bill Reed, no, at the Museum of Anthropology, Bill McLennan. He had scored a big chunk of mica up in the mountains in the interior. Said he was hiking one day and he spotted something shining really hard. So he went up and there was a piece of mica. So he pulled it back to Vancouver, and he gave me a big chunk of it. And it's beautiful piece. And so I had this young guy, Brandon, pulling it all apart and making this flake. And so what I wanted to do with the salmon was paint the top like that, and then put like a shellac on there and sprinkle the mica all throughout, so it has a glitter to it. And then I'd repaint another coat of shellac on there just to seed it in place. And you can kind of see some of them are mica on. It worked out well. It was a nice thing. Next. Yeah, there we are. The guys are moving actually the pieces up the upright position with the machinery that they had there. It was interesting how they did it. You know, we were always scared of them damaging something because red cedar is amazingly soft and but nice to carve. It's beautiful wood. It's one of our favorites because it lasts so long in the outdoor weather, right? North here. And so we're just scared of somebody knocking it and denting it somehow. No, we got away without too much damage. And, you know, putting it together here. The guys were pretty good at it, so I'm happy for that. Next. Yeah, they're putting the last piece in place, and that was a bit of a challenge because they had to get the forks out of there too. And it's heavy. Each slab is heavy. And then you got to piece it in there, and then we got designed a bracket system in the back so that when the piece is shrunk, it would just keep coming down. And so that means it had to be able to slip. We tightened the bolts up, but had a trough in there so that would slide down. So we still had to get the forks out of there with the piece coming down. They did a nice job. Next. Yeah, there I am. We're doing the final finishing on the piece, and which was a long time. You know, it was over 3.5 years on that project. Like I said, there was 4 of us for the majority of it. My son, Carl Hart, John Brent Bennett, Leon Ridley, and then Brandon Brown joined us in the tail end of it. When we went down to Vancouver, he joined up and worked with us. It was 5 of us in the end. But that was 3.5 years of work. So takes a lot of energy to do something like this. And we were working steady. Oh, we took Christmas off. Here we are. This is here it is sitting in the Audain Art Museum in Whistler. And it was wonderful to have them design the wall into this space, and it's in there with all the ancient pieces. The only real contemporary piece of this hall here in the gallery, and so I was quite excited about that. And they actually designed it to fit at the end of the hall or gallery, and they gave it space behind so that we could actually, as a performer, we can have some space. There's just enough space for us to do our changing and moving about and getting ready for the next dance. But if you look in the center, there's a shaman in the center bottom standing on a salmon house. Behind the shaman, there's a door, and that door actually opens up, and that's where you can come up. You can move the shaman off that. He fitted over in that block of wood over in the left there, and it stands on top of that. Still part of the performance, and then you can open the door, and then the performer can step through and step back in. And then the holes you see in the nostrils and the mouth and the blowholes of the whale, you can see holes, and those holes will go right through to the backside. And we organized it so that we could blow eagle down, out the mouth and out the nostrils and out the blowhole, so out into that space with the performers at a certain moment. That was the idea. And so on this, you know what, this whole idea come about, like I was trying to get to earlier, and it slipped my mind in a sense. So I wanted to make it say something and mean something. And so I've always cared for the salmon. I care for everything. All the stuff that's disappearing and having trouble in this in this world. And it's so sad how we want to overrun everything and take over and crunch things up and destroy things and not try to live with it, you know. And so salmon is one of the things that we depend on here a lot for our sustenance, and our people have always enjoyed salmon for thousands of years. And you know, it's one of those things where salmon disappear, then they come back every year. They'll come back. Some years better than others. And so that's what the idea with the shaman is standing on Salmon House. He's doing his rituals. He's calling the salmon back. You know, he's making sure that they'll come back and, for our future sustenance. So we have great thoughts about salmon, and not just salmon though. Why I'm focusing on salmon is because that's what we deal with here. And there's other fish we deal with too, and cods and black cod and halibut and all these fish, everything. Well, you know, anyway, and it's all important to us because that's our food, part of our food system for the seas. And
So you have the salmon around the periphery of the screen, Jim, and you mentioned that that's the basis of this work. The crest that you have stacked up, the bear in the middle with the two cubs underneath and the eagle at the top. Can you speak about those and the other elements within the screen?
Sure can. So we're having trouble with salmon today. And so I wanted to help bring attention to what's going on with salmon. We need to protect them. They've protected us, kept us alive for 1,000 years. It's to the point now where we need to protect them. And that's the whole idea on this. And so we have the bear. I mean, salmon's so important to the bear in its cycle of life. And then you got it's a story in a sense too, because you have the twins there, but it's also salmon people. It's a double play on figures. And then you got the whales, the killer whales on either side, the bull on the left of the big fin, the female on the right side as I'm looking at it. And they're both, they eat salmon, they eat meat, they eat salmon. And then you got the beaver with the hands up around his mouth. The beaver people owned the salmon at one time. And then the raven, as you see the face right next to the beaver, that's a salmon person. Then you get the salmon, that salmon people, and then the salmon running around the outside. Then you get the raven on the other side. And the raven, so the beaver on the other side is hollering away to the raven, bring back my salmon, you stole my salmon. And so the raven happy, that he's got the salmon, control of the salmon. So the raven is why we have salmon today. He spread it around. And so it ends up that we all get to eat salmon, and he did his part. And so he shared it with us. And so quite happy about that. But you see the depth of the piece too from this shot here, and how deep it is. And this is the bear in the center, and the shaman with his hand up, and then the cubs on either side, the blowholes for the killer whale, and then the eyes. There's all deep meaning behind all this stuff, and where it all comes from, and our history with the critters. Our history with the bears, history with the killer whales, the history with the salmon, history with the beavers, history with the frogs, history with the eagles. All those things are all part of our life, and we have a lot of stories about each figure and how it worked in our stories, and how we taught our youngsters about this, the depth of it, and the meaning that.
So part of the completion after this piece was carved and installed at the museum, and museum opened, and then you came back to Whistler with your dancers in the fall of 2018 to dance in this screen. And can you talk to our audience about the importance and the process of dancing in the screen?
Well, the dance was to complete the screen itself. And so it was always in mind to do a dance. And I didn't want to do a dance wherever we moved it. I wanted to do a dance when it was finished. That would be the dance that validated the wall, the screen, and here I am, my regalia, doing a dance in front of the screen with the singers to my right. And they're drumming and singing for me. And so that was the start of the dancing with our group there. And it was wonderful that they come down from Haida. They're all Haidas and singers and dancers and artists themselves. And so it was nice to have them back me up on this. There's a big John Brent Bennett in his bear outfit in a bear dance, and he's a big man. So when he stands up, he's quite tall. And I actually believe that he could fit through the door with the costume, as in his regalia, with the bear regalia, and through. It was amazing to see him come through that and go back in. And then,
yeah, I remember that very clearly. He came out with those silver claw rings, and he was so lifesome in the way that he moved through that doorway. It was absolutely incredible.
It was incredible. It was amazing to see. Next. Yeah, here we are. We have the beaver dancing and hanging on to a wonderful, kind of like a talking stick. We use them for making speeches and events. And then you got the frog in the entrance of the doorway hanging out and ready to bounce out. And so they're amazing performers too. And it was a wonderful event. I was thankful that you guys invited us down to do this. There I am to the left, and then we got Michael Audain in the eagle mask there. It's like a headpiece. He's wearing it well, and he's doing a good job on the dance. And you can see him flying around like an eagle. We're doing the eagle dance in this one. And I thank Michael for doing what he's done for us and for me and on this commission and the meaning behind it. And he backs it up too, you know, with the wonderful things that he does with his life. And he backs up the arts, and thankful for Michael.
And it was really a milestone in the history of this museum, that dance that evening. It was such an incredible experience for everybody here, and really made this, not only the screen, but all the older works that night, if you'll remember, Jim, kind of came to life.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be, actually an honor to be around the old pieces. You know, when you look at the old pieces, they make me cry. You know, I want to cry. I see them, and it's just what they carry and what they represent. And to have my piece in there with them, it's amazing. I'm just so happy and thankful for that. It's amazing to be involved with our ancestors. A gift.
Okay, Jim, we're going to move now to the question and answer part. And again, I want to underline the fact that not only did we have a record in terms of the number of people registered at over 500, we also had a record of the number of people who sent in questions for you, Jim, which was well over 60. And we're going to we've chosen just a number of questions for you. And the first one comes from Peter in Vancouver. And he asks, does your inspiration come easier to you when you're working on Haida than when you're working elsewhere in the province or the world?
Well, it does come easier at home here because it's just where it all comes from. For me, it all comes from here, and the depth, the meaning behind it. We're still connected up here, and so I want that in my work. I want that connection to things in my work, and so I'm quite happy to design from here. If I'm down in the city, I can design down there. It depends on how long I've been away from home. You know, as the longer I'm down in Vancouver, the more washed out I feel in a sense. It's like if I touch our homelands, it just builds me up again, makes me strong, and then I feel good like that. Now, when I leave here, I feel like that for quite a while. And then it slowly dissipates. And then, so I can design, but it doesn't have the same sort of feeling.
Okay. And then Norm from Tofino asks, what are the contemporary questions facing Indigenous carvers in Canada today?
Well, when I was younger, there wasn't so many carvers. There was carvers, but today there's a lot more carvers. So I think for them to get their works out there and get recognized is a little harder than it was for me in my day. I mean, there was carvers in my day too. I mean, it's just a sign of the times and what's going on, you know, and younger people are picking up on it, and we like when younger people pick up on the arts and carry it forward. We are living today. We are also carrying forward from the past, and so we get a whole mixture of things going on. So I think the younger people, I don't know, you know, if they can spend time where it comes from and spend time with the ancestral pieces, they feel that too. And then that would add a lot to the contemporary pieces. And I notice that younger people, when they do get close to the stuff, they soak it up. They turn into sponges, of course, and then feel the energy of that. So I don't know. I say study the old pieces, study the ancestral pieces, your ancestral pieces, and see what our ancestors were doing, and it carries forth into today. I mean, life is just more modern with the technologies, but life is life. We live, we breathe, we eat, we propagate, we move forward, but we got a lot more distractions today, so they're dealing with that too. Like computer.
Okay. And we have a very topical question that came in from a number of people. Deb in Whistler and Jeff in Vancouver ask, how is COVID-19 affecting your art?
Oh, well, it's not actually, it's working in a good way for me. It makes me focus more. It makes you stay home. And so I have my work in my home and out in the studio here at our workspace. And so I've got a lot of work around, so I just can turn around and I can grab something and get to work on it. And so it makes you focus more, making me focus more. And so it's working out for me, but I know there's a lot of people out there that are not doing too well. And I feel for them. And I'm so happy that we're up here at home in Haida because we have our foods right here and got a sense of security. And COVID-19's not around here so much. We had a couple of little bouts with it, but we shut it down, and so our people are quite safe. We're trying to be safe, and so we pray that we can keep it away from us. And a friend just phoned just not too long before this evening, told me that he's got it, and he's down there in Phoenix, and he's his fifth day now with it, and he just about died right off the bat. So it's quite serious, scary. So it is a serious thing.
Okay, thank you. And Braxton from Minneapolis asks about the title of this piece. It's called The Dance Screen, The Scream 2. And could you talk about that reference to the Scream 2, please?
Well, the Scream 2, I got all the figures on this piece. If you look at the overall picture, you see the figures are hollering and the mouths are all kind of hollering. And so I figured the Scream 2, there's an old painting out there called The Scream. And then it wasn't about that really, but the idea of the Scream 2. We're screaming too, we're also screaming. And we're all screaming also. And it's about attention for the salmon, trying to bring attention to the salmon, what's going on, how we can help them, stuff like this. And there's, fish farms are not doing good and all this stuff. And sports fishermen with the catch and release program are killing a lot of salmon. We need to protect them more. Fish enhancement programs and all that. It's just we need to work on saving them. But it's a thermometer, one of the thermometers in this world. There's so many things going on out there, like the sharks and bees and all bats, everything. A lot of things going haywire, and we need to help out somehow. Figure it out. We can do it.
And that actually is a good lead into a question that came from Pamela in Seattle. What do you think the outlook is for salmon habitats in British Columbia and Washington State?
Well, seems like salmon are going down all the time, like lower and lower and lower, and it's getting quite serious. And so it doesn't look promising, but we still have a chance to turn it around if we start working hard on it, and then understand what the destruction is for the salmon. And there is a good body of people that want to save the salmon. And it's a serious move because it's not just salmon, it's the things that depend on salmon too. Like I said, the bears, they depend on it every year. The eagles depend on it, a lot of things. The trees, everything. It's like the fish are sustenance for so many things, for our people, for other people on the coast. We're all here on the coast of BC, And down in the States and up in Alaska, because of the salmon, the bountifulness of salmon returning, and it helped us with our food stuff. Why do you think we set up our communities all along the shores here by the rivers and stuff, It's like, but today they're starting to disappear, and it's like, no, we can't let it go like that. We need to fight for them. So I think in the future, it's kind of dreary looking, but we still have a bunch of people that want to save them and help out. So we do our part.
Okay. And we have John from Windsor asks, how does the story that you convey here, how would you like it to be received in 100 years from now?
Well, I just hope it's still doing its work, and doing its job and helping out with bringing attention to the salmon. And we'll see where we're at in 100 years from now. I'm counting on technology to last to be about 120 years old. Kind of wrinkled.
So am I, Jim. Hopefully we can last a little longer with technology. The last question that we're going to have for you tonight, and it's very apropos, and it comes from Lori in Vancouver. And she asks, when might the screen door be opened next?
Well, that's a nice question. Loaded, actually. So I guess with COVID going on and when things settle down, maybe we'll plan an event where we can get together down there and celebrate life. COVID's scary and it's scaring a lot of people. So once we get control again, we got to celebrate life in a good way, because we're all seeing a lot of things in this one. And it's like, holy smokes. And a lot of people are having a hard time. So we celebrate life. Let's make 2021 a great year, but we all have to work at it. So I'm hoping we can open up the door, do some performances, not just with our Haida people, but maybe with a couple of other nations join in and have some fun. Serious
okay,
fun.
Well, yeah, that's very optimistic, Jim, and that's a great place to wind up our broadcast for the evening. And I want to thank you and the entire team here at the Audain Museum as this institution continues to be both vibrant and resilient. I'm also very appreciative of the ongoing support of our founder, Michael Audain, as well as Yoshi Karasawa, the Audain Art Museum trustees and founders who continue to be very generous with both their time and resources to keep this museum moving forward in this difficult period. I would be remiss if I didn't put a big thank you in to our TNT crew, our director, producer, Justine Nickel, our quality control coordinator, Nadine Hassan, and our lighting expert, Brianna Beacom. We have a few shout outs tonight. I want to say hi to my dad in Cornwall, my sister Susie in Canada. I want to say hello to one of our biggest fans on Haida Gwaii, Rosemary. And also, I think it's important to thank the dancers that came here, Ernest Swanson, Nika Collison, Gwalaga Hart, John Brent Bennett, Sean Edenshaw, Desiree Weir, Christian White, Candace White, and again, both yourself, Jim, and Rosemary. We're very appreciative to our sponsor for season 2, HSBC Bank Canada. And I should also mention that we have 2 things that are going to be produced around the screen. We have a major documentary film by Helen Haig Brown that's being sponsored by TELUS that'll be coming out in 2021. As well, there's going to be a major essay for an interview that we did together, Jim, almost a year and a half ago at the Bill Reid Gallery. That's going to be coming out in a book published by the University of British Columbia, the Museum of Anthropology, called Art of the Salish Sea. And lastly, I wanted to acknowledge and thank all the viewers that have been tuning in to TNT last season and again this season. Next week, we'll feature Lori Papo and a wonderful painting here in the collection. And lastly, I want to say thank you to you, Jim, and wave you a good night to Haida Gwaii.
Thank you, Curtis, Dr. Curtis.
Okay. Well, have a great evening, and it's good night from TNT, and see you all next week at 8 p.m. for Lori Pow Pow. Good night, everyone.
Good night.